Welcome back, everyone. Now it's time for a Fireside discussion on topic implementing AI in critical systems. Please welcome Branko Primertica, partner at Tellers International. Hello, Branko. So I'm happy to be here with you today and discuss implementing AI in critical systems. And for start, I would like to ask you about implementation challenges. So what are the common challenges organizations face when implementing AI in critical systems? And can we ensure smooth integration of AI without disrupting existing critical infrastructure?
So, yes, there's two versions of critical systems. One is mission critical systems that are in companies or in government agencies that talk about financial management, grants management, things of that nature. Then we have our critical infrastructure systems. Those could control transport, finances, healthcare, and those are the systems that we will be focusing on today. Because there's a lot of talk about using using artificial intelligence to power or make decisions on our critical infrastructure. For example, on the energy grid. There's talk about using sensor network that sends information back to a system that will analyze all that data, because it's humanly possible not to analyze all that data, and then we'll make a decision as to routing energy somewhere or something akin to that. And the security challenges that most organizations tend to run into are not, or challenges that they tend to run into, is data, because artificial intelligence does not work without data. It's the lack of data will not give you an artificial intelligence solution that works. The use of false data or data that hasn't been tested will give you the wrong result. And so it's important to have access to a large amount of data, which I think you already know, and access to quality data, because one missing piece of information can lead you to a wrong conclusion at the very end. So I think that's very important. I think challenges in implementing artificial intelligence solutions into an infrastructure deal with a lot with interoperability. Like, for example, let's say you have multiple artificial intelligence solutions built by different vendors using different technology. Are they going to interoperate or not? That's the question. There is, and I'll talk about the United States a little bit, because I spent 26 years consulting the US federal government on various digitalization topics. I moved to Belgrade only about 2 years ago. So they actually prescribe the standards and data standards that the vendors have to use themselves. That way you are cutting that issue right off before it becomes a problem. They've also defined technical issues as well to ensure interoperability between systems, whether they be artificial intelligence or not. So I think one of the things that we must think about when we're talking about critical infrastructure and systems is defining which data standards, or standards that we want our vendors to actually adhere to, because that's technology can do that easily. But if nobody tells them, nobody will follow.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, amazing. You said something really interesting about how US is writing the regulatories and all the laws regarding the AI systems. So given the sensitive nature of critical systems, how do organizations navigate and comply with regulatory frameworks when implementing AI? Are there any specific regulatory challenges unique to the integration of AI in those critical infrastructure? Are they different from regular infrastructures or companies?
So unfortunately, there's not much regulation there. The pace of innovation in artificial intelligence has by far surpassed the pace of the evolution of artificial intelligence. So countries and other organizations like the United Nations, the European Union, are now looking to catch up, right? So here in Serbia, we have a cybersecurity law. And then we have artificial intelligence strategic plan, that we have an artificial intelligence ethics principles. But in the law, we have to do something about cybersecurity as well, because that hasn't been a consideration as of yet. So apart from, the United States has now implemented not just saying that they're going to use artificial intelligence, that they're going to be safe, it's going to be safe use, and how that use will be safe, but they've also implemented a zero trust kind of architecture, or are preparing to implement that. And what that means is that when you're using artificial intelligence, because this has come about because of cyber attacks that are occurring more and more, and phishing attacks are becoming more sophisticated, the Biden administration has instructed all federal agencies to start preparing for implementation of zero trust. That means trust nothing, verify everything. It sounds very paranoid, but it's something that's needed. So whenever you enter a system that under zero trust, you will be asked to verify yourself over and over again in different methods in order to be able to access only the data that you need to do your job, no more, no less. So it's a different way of working, because before you might be able to look at other things as well, but zero trust is one of those things that's evolving right now, and that other countries are looking to follow suit. The European Commission, the European Union is scheduled to adopt a EU regulation at the end of this year, and China has EU regulations and principles as well. But theirs deal mostly with what I looked at today is suppressing any sort of criticism against the government there. So everybody can use it for their own purpose, but that's how far regulation has occurred. So things are with the I guess my problem with generative AI and being used in terms of whether it be asset management or whether it be critical infrastructure management is that it was released to the public, to cyber hackers, to everyone, without any sort of instruction on how to use artificial intelligence. So people who have never touched a solution that involves artificial intelligence now have this powerful tool at their disposal in which allows them to do a lot.
Yeah, and malicious access specifically.
Yeah, and really, that deals with everything from, it's possible that there's a teenager somewhere who knows how to create malware, but now can ask GPT to create something of his or her own, and instead of taking 4 or 5 days, now takes an hour to do, and unleashes it. Or phishing scams, which are now becoming way more personal than they've been before. That deals with deepfakes, for example, where ChatGPT has the power to take an image, apply a voice to it, and let's say, but this takes a lot of data. You have to put a lot of your own data on the internet. I was talking to someone yesterday who said he does not have any data on the internet. He was forced to open a LinkedIn account. He works at Microsoft, but otherwise he says, I have no digital footprint whatsoever. The more information that you put out there, the more of your voice that you put out there, the more pictures that you put out there, somebody can create a deep fake that looks like you and talks like you and has your mannerisms, right? And that can be a dangerous topic. And they could use that in a phishing scam. Let's say they click upon you, you ask, and you pop up and you say, I need for you to send me your credit card information. I need to buy groceries for tonight. And you thinking, and your child or husband thinking it's you, can actually respond to it and give information. So Gen AI.
Sorry, do you maybe know how we can protect from that, especially from the government perspective?
Right now, that's in its early stages, so you can now take a look and see that it's a deep fake, but eventually it will become more sophisticated. There are studies being done at Cambridge and Harvard on developing a solution, other organizations as well, developing a solution that can scan a deep fake and say, yes, this is probably a deep fake or not. But my favorite is, so I received an email from a colleague asking me to authorize a distribution of $50,000 to reserve a hotel suite that or conference room that we use every year for a conference that we put together. And I thought that was very odd because he never asked me via email, and because I can't give him financial information over the phone. So I go to his office. I'm like, did you send me an email for 50,000? And he said, no, I never did that.
Yeah.
I mean, so I would hope that the protection for now, until there's a solution for it technical, is to be aware and be suspicious of things. That if you're not sure about something, pick up the phone and call and make sure that the person that you're talking to is actually the person that you think you're talking to.
Yeah, that is the great effort all cybersecurity engineers have in their company, I'm sure.
I know.
So regarding the training and education of employees, so given the complexity of critical systems, how can organizations mitigate the risk of human error? Is there any specific education or some trainings or anything that can help prevent human errors in
Right. If that was an available training course, I would be the first one to actually sign up for it. There is unfortunately no course that prevents human error, but there are solutions out there that will, for example, test your code. Like if you're in agile development, and as soon as you complete a string of code, you check it into GitHub or Jira or whatever, there's automated solutions to test your code for vulnerabilities. That's one way of doing it. As far as data is concerned, you'll have to find that out the hard way. And that means once you're running your algorithm, trained algorithm on the data, are you getting the output that you are actually expecting? And if you're not, why not? And it's probably due to the data that you've put in, because that's it. So that's a harder way to analyze it, but that's the way to go, at least for now.
Yeah. Regarding the employees that are working in all of those critical infrastructures, especially on AI parts of those critical infrastructures, what are their education? What is their profile, work profile? Are they data scientists, software engineers? Are they supports, or something completely different? What are their occupation,
Right. So that's a good question too. And it deals with, okay, you're talking about the implementation team of
Yes, and the people who are
solution.
working with AI every day on those critical infrastructure, or reading the data, or whatever. Yeah.
So I'll answer that in three parts. There's the implementation part, which you will need to have a full project team available. And that is, you have a software engineer, but you also have a data scientist who is taking a look and seeing, okay, is this model correct? We're picking the model. Is this model correct? This is when you're developing the solution. Is it trained correctly? Right? You'll also have, and I misspoke, if they'll train the model, but you have a functional person from that line of business who will say, yes, this is producing the results necessary for me to do my job. Then you'll have your cybersecurity personnel there that will ensure the protection of that data, continuously monitoring it to make sure that it is kept safe. Because there can be attacks on the data while you're training it. There could be attacks on the data that when you deploy the solution. So it's not really much of a difference in terms of staffing. Data scientists are part of the team right now, and they work with functional and technical people to develop a AI solution. Now, as the solution goes into implementation, you have your end users, which you've developed this for, so they can do their jobs easier and more effectively. That's the purpose of artificial intelligence. It's not to say Joe, or well, I'm in Serbia, Nikola or Alexander, you're replaced right now by this AI tool, and thank you very much for your 20 years of experience here. But it's meant to actually make Nikola or Alexander more productive. right?
Of course.
And so they are the users of that artificial intelligence solution, and they, as subject matter experts, know whether it's producing the right information or not. Cybersecurity will be constantly scanning the data throughout the life cycle to make sure that there's no attacks on the data itself that can alter the resolution or the outputs of the artificial intelligence solution.
Okay, can we, since we talk about data a lot, can we ensure in those critical systems that have AI that CS triad is met, or confidentiality, integrity, and availability? Can we ensure that those data are not altered, changed, that they are secure? What are the measures, or maybe better to say, what more measures we need to take into account than as for regular company or infrastructure?
Right, right. So it's interesting when clients ask that they want 100% guarantee that their solution will not be.
In cybersecurity, we know that nothing is 100% secure.
It's 100% secure, unfortunately. So what I mentioned before, the difference between the data between AI solutions and other solutions is the attacks are more focused on the data itself. There's data poisoning, there's input, there's other kind of injections that can be done, which will alter the model of the data or alter the data itself so it produces wrong results. And that is a deliberate attack against a critical infrastructure system or another system as well. So that's why there's more focus on data protection. Constant data monitoring is important, along with encryption of that data is also very important. So you'll prevent any sort of attacks on it. There's also a solution that I forgot that actually it takes personal data and just kind of makes it look like gibberish. So that's another
hashing,
system.
probably.
That's another way that you could protect data from being influenced by a malicious actor.
Yeah, okay, amazing. There have been a lot of discussion regarding the ethics of AI. We also had a part of the conference dedicated only to the ethical part of AI and what that actually means. Since critical systems are dealing with PHI or PII and all types of sensitive data, are there any considerations that organizations should take into account when implementing AI in critical systems regarding the ethics? Is it okay to use it?
Well, it's okay to use it if you use it correctly, but if you use it maliciously, then it's not okay. But let's say, for example, in terms of critical infrastructure systems, you don't have the usual problems of bias or something like that, because you're not looking to see, you're not racial profiling or you're not doing things of that nature. But there is in ethics, there is the principle of relying on safety and security of those systems. And that is something that that engineers really must take into account, because those systems deal with personally identifiable information, and they also deal with information that can impact the well-being of citizens in certain ways. You know, if it's working with transport, or it's working with energy or anything else. So people, engineers and data scientists, have the responsibility to adhere to that ethics principle, to use artificial intelligence in a way that guarantees the safety of citizens at large. And otherwise, in healthcare or anywhere else, you do have the profiling, where let's say for example, you're using artificial intelligence to develop a solution for help, and this is U.S. For healthcare. But the examples that you're using are mostly of white males that are training the data. Well, the data is going to be skewed, and it's mostly going to give you results that are turned towards white males rather than the rest of the population. So when you're training your data, you have to have a wide base. And a lot of people are using ethicists or other social kind of workers or anything to ensure that, yes, this data is representative
Yeah,
of
that's
the
amazing
public.
approach.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sociologists as well, because you don't want to leave a portion of the population out,
Yeah.
right? And if you do that, you will then poison the trust that people have in your AI solution or other AI solutions,
Yeah.
and that causes big harm to your whole AI
Yeah,
program.
people are really feared about AI now. Even if something happened like that, it would be
Yeah, yeah.
really bad.
Yeah, or with your financial,
Yeah.
information or something like that, it can actually be bad. I mean, the fear of AI that was a topic that we spoke about a couple of days ago. Is it going to doom us or is it going to make us succeed? And that's also a talk in industry as well. Is artificial intelligence the end of human life, or is it the beginning of a whole new era? And I think that, in my opinion, that it is the beginning of a whole new era, but we have to do it, we have to innovate in a controlled manner that regulations can keep up with. And those regulations can't be too strict because then you'll stifle innovation, but they have to be strict enough in order to be able to control how artificial intelligence is used. But there were people who thought that, yes, a billion robots are going to come at us and powered by artificial intelligence to take over the world. I
Yeah.
mean, China and the United States are developing 2 million robots each by the year 20 or something like that, and they're going to be artificial intelligence powered, AI powered. So what's the purpose of that? They haven't explained, but that can be kind of scary at times, wondering why are all these robots coming? But yeah.
Yeah, amazing. From your experience, how important is international collaboration? And do countries collaborate on this issue? And have you ever collaborated with some other country or continent or European Union?
Yeah, there is a lot of collaboration on this, just as there is in security, so there's a lot of collaboration in artificial intelligence. The United States has developed it's been around already, an agency called CISM, which is responsible for protecting the country from attacks, whether they be AI powered or not. What they've done is set up a program for multinational collaboration. And that's just one example. It's not the only example, of course. But in that way, they could share best practices. They could share what they're doing, what are other countries doing, et cetera. Here, there's collaboration, believe it or not, within using the national CERT within the country, with partner or with regional countries, and with Europe at large. So artificial intelligence is going to be one of those things that's just added to that collaboration because it's important to learn from others. What use cases have you developed? What problems have you encountered? If you've suffered an attack, how did you remediate it? That's very important because that could be costly. And if somebody's already gone through it, you'll have lessons learned already built in.
Yeah, amazing. Can you tell us how U.S. is prepared for AI? Are they preparing? How they prepare, and what they're doing?
So I kind of covered some of those things as well. So CISM, who's now has the primary responsibility for AI attacks or for other attacks, has said in their plan for artificial intelligence, they plan to use artificial intelligence to augment their security systems. So that's a big deal because they're the first ones to come out and say we will be using artificial intelligence to supplement our security systems. They also mentioned about the multinational kind of stakeholder arrangements. They've also mentioned that they will be verifying the use and accrediting solutions and helping public sector companies and private sector companies to implement AI solutions safely. So they are going to be going around to different companies, whether it be, well, I don't know whether IBM or Microsoft wants to have help from, but other maybe smaller companies, kind of helping them implement artificial intelligence safely, so they're not prone to attack. So now you have this body, which is a very powerful body that's there to protect you and help you implement AI solutions safely. They're working on regulation right now as to the use of AI. They're preparing for zero trust, which I mentioned as well. Mm-hmm. That's, I think it's President Biden signed 800-53, the resolution that starts the preparation for zero trust architecture implementation across the board, because they just simply, with people working from home a lot, and with the advancements in artificial intelligence, they just don't think they could handle the amount of cyber attacks that are coming their way. So that's why they're moving to zero trust in order to kind of nip that in the bud. And they're going to be training their workforce. Mm-hmm. Workforce training means in this model that they're going to be training not only the people that work for them, but the people that work for government at large. And then they'll move on to people who are citizens who are looking to use artificial intelligence for something. So you need to have somebody there to help you who's responsible enough or knowledgeable enough to ensure that your solutions are implemented in a safe way. Yeah. And that continuing education is critical. And not just for not just for cybersecurity, where you say, okay, how do you spot an insider threat? How do you resolve this issue? But then also, how do you identify this deep fake? How do you identify a phishing scam that's now very sophisticated, and so forth?
Yeah, amazing. At the end, I would like to ask you, is there any example of a real-world cyber attack on critical systems, or from your experience, have you ever experienced any cyber attack where AI is applied? Mm-hmm. And if there are any, of course, what happened and what were the implications? What lessons can be learned from those? Have we learned anything from those attacks?
So, well, personally, I've never been attacked by AI, and I hope never to be attacked by AI. But let's say there have been attacks using some simpler form of AI or no AI at all. Like there was a recent attack on the Colonial Pipeline in the United States, which stopped operations on the gas pipeline for about a week or so before they could find the vulnerability and find the actual malware, contain it, and eradicate it. So that took a little bit of time, but that was an example of something that cost the United States a lot of money. And this is kind of, doomsday sort of thing. Nations are using, well, the United States, let's say, for example, China, the European Union, and Israel, for example, have cyber commands or cyber warfare centers. Mm-hmm. That just in the United States, just as you have a command for the Navy, for the Air Force, for the Army, so you have a command for artificial intelligence. And that's for defensive and offensive purposes. So countries are using cyber attacks, maybe some AI-powered cyber attacks on each other in order to, let's say, destroy a particular program or technology that's in use. Let's say in Iran, their nuclear power, nuclear ambitions are being stunted by the United States and Israel through cyber attacks. When Russia came into Ukraine, they didn't start with tanks and armies. They started by knocking out their electrical grid. So that took power away, and then they came in. So yes, there's multiple instances of cyber attacks on critical infrastructure, and there'll be a lot more as we move on. But you know, electrical energy networks are the most common place to attack because a lot of countries, including the United States, have very weak points in their energy infrastructure, and it's an easy target.
Okay, I was really interested in about how the systems, I mean, how resource can be allocated. Is there a way for electrical grid, for example? Is there a backup for emergency or for those things? Do you even think about that, or governments, do they think about that, to have some backup when a system failure? When the system failed. Okay.
So your electrical grid is monitored heavily using physical security and technical security. In technical security, a lot of people are using computer vision, which is a subset of artificial intelligence, to take a look at the perimeter with cameras and identify anomalies, because perimeters for critical infrastructure are very large and very long and very hard to kind of keep track on everything. And yes, maybe you may have cameras, but are those cameras going to be able to see every single thing that's out there? Are the people going to be sleeping in their offices that are supposed to be looking at those cameras or not? Or are they going to be actually actively looking? So what a lot of people have done are have added computer vision to their cameras or whatever. This is what, and train the model to say this is what it's supposed to look like, report any anomaly. And the solution will set an alert in the security office if somebody tries to come close to the perimeter, tries to breach the perimeter, or anything else, which then can cause a response. Either a drone coming in to take a look and see who is it, or people coming over to see what's going on. So it just depends on the type of infrastructure that's being used that we're talking about. You know, if it's healthcare, there's a lot of data protection, a lot, because that's very important, and getting wrong data into the system with data poisoning, or getting access and misaligning the data can cause something up to death of an individual.
Of course.
So yeah, so you have teams that are there to monitor the data and then take care of it if there's a certain change, and if they see a change, they might have to take the system offline. Because it may be just not a malware or whatever. It may be a data poisoning attack, and you don't want a system that's out there that's been that has false data. So you'll take that offline, you'll compare it to your backup, and then you'll put it back online. As far as the electrical grid, I don't think there's a backup to it.
Yeah.
It would be nice to have another spare one on the side, but I don't think there's an actual backup to it. It's just that it will cause a blackout, and the blackout will need to be contained, and you go through the incident response process.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Thank you so much. I learned a lot. Thank you.
I hope so.
Is there any questions?
How can you
Yes.
Hello? How
Hello.
can you protect against such a data poisoning? And do you go through the data before feeding it to the model? Does it occur only in like non-supervised learning algorithms?
Yeah, so you will need, whether it's supervised or unsupervised, when you're training your model, you will need to make sure that the data is clean. So that's one thing. You've gone through it, it's labeled, it's clean, you've verified it. So it's very important to go through that process. But once the data is been used to train the model, then you continuously kind of monitor that data to see whether there's changes in it, whether there's an attack on it, because data has a life cycle. You monitor it throughout that life cycle to see whether or not there's been suspicious activity on it.
Like you check the output of the model if it is suspicious?
Well, that's one thing. If it starts producing different outputs, then it's definitely been poisoned. If there's an anomaly, let's say it works just fine, the model, and there's an anomaly on how it works, let's say, a change, or because it's going to be under monitoring, you'll have to make a change or stop that model and take a look and see what's going on to reduce any falsehoods. I'm sorry, I forgot the rest of your question.
No. How do you actually verify the data?
Yeah. The data verification is going to have to be, they have to come from people. There's no way to, I don't think that there's any way to verify. Let's say you're using energy data or hospital data, let's say for a patient. There's no way to verify unless you have, and I'm a big advocate of this, you can't have a team of technical people developing a solution for patient care without having functional people there as well, going, yes, that's the data that we need, that's the data, and then looking through that data, sifting through it, making sure that it's clean and labeled correctly. Once that data is clean and labeled correctly, and you use it to train the model, then you can encrypt that data, you can scan that data, and you make sure that you treat anomalies as a potential security threat. And that way you can take it offline or whatever it is.
Yes, but this is only when dealing with how they're called golden data sets, which are labeled by humans. This way, you cannot use machine-generated data sets at all because they can't be verified. When dealing with large data.
Yeah, it depends on what you're talking about. Machine-generated data is not a particular solution because it's going to create data that looks like it may exist, but if you're talking about health data, you can't use machine-generated data. Let's say, for example, right? So if you're using the energy grid, you can't use simulated data to train your model because it has to be, it has to pertain to your actual energy grid.
I meant not humanly labeled data, not exactly machine-generated.
Okay, yeah. So humanly labeled data is something that goes on. That's how it's done. So, and I mean, artificial intelligence can look through data. At one point, it may be able to look through data, identify anomalies, and say this one doesn't fit in or this one doesn't fit in. That's a solution that's still yet to come about, to ascertain the correctness of the data. And that's something that will be worthwhile if it comes out.
Thank you.
You're welcome. There's a question in the back, I think.
Thank you for taking my question. In the first half of your presentation, you had mentioned something about white medical doctors and skewness of data. Can you clarify that? You quoted some study.
So the bias towards, so when you're training your data in the medical field, or if you're doing social programs, let's say, and you're training your AI model to find qualified individuals that can receive assistance from your agency, you have to be able to use data that's representative of your whole population, right? So the model will not be able to see the difference between Black, white, Hispanic, or whatever sorts of minorities there are, or Indian. You have to train it to do that. And studies have shown recently that, in hiring, people were using AI to research resumes. Well, it's highly biased towards males instead of females, because it was trained to spot males as being more adept at technology than females are. It wasn't using rationale, it wasn't using their technical skills, it was using just the name and a picture, or if it's available. So, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I was kind of afraid that you're going to say that, because if you're developing the model that way to promote minorities in North America, for example, where we all know that white males are discriminated against on the institutional basis, then why would you do that? Why would you support an agenda like that and skew data even more?
Well,
and as far as your point about male-dominated programming or engineering occupations, well, there are a bunch of studies up from the North Europe, Norway, for example, where if any society invested a lot of resources and time into equating the rights between men and women, they did, right? And the output or outcome of that little experiment was that they naturally gravitated towards their strength. So males typically went into engineering, making Lego castles and stuff like that. And women, being more empathetic, they went into more social, more touchy-feely professions. So I don't see your point there.
Well,
and I don't see your point also about deliberately skewing the model to give advantage to a part of the population that already has advantage over poor white males in North America.
right. Well, you and I have a huge cultural difference when it comes to that, I think, because I don't necessarily understand why males are being targeted in North America, for example. I lived there 26 years. I did my own job, my own merit. I lived very well. Didn't have any situations where I felt like I was discriminated against. Now, if you're talking about affirmative action, where you need to hire a certain number of Hispanics, of African Americans, et cetera, that's a whole other discussion. And if in that case, I think you're correct. But a lot of programs that are social programs are geared towards minorities, not because of the fact that white people have it all, but because the majority of Hispanics or the majority of African Americans do not have the level of wealth and the level of well-being or health insurance necessary to live a normal life. So these programs were designed for that. Will it include a white male? Maybe, if it's trained to do so. But my point is that you don't skew the model. You create the model that's representative of your society, that's representative of your population. So I'm not saying leave white people out. If they're there, then yes, include them, of course. But you can't leave somebody out of your model to cause it to deliberately just give preference to somebody else. That's what I was trying to say. I don't know whether that clarified it or not, but
there's nothing to clarify, really. You are basically saying the same thing what Democratic Party is saying in the States.
yeah, I don't
which
think
is
that we'll see
female
the
power
eye
and
to
stuff
eye on
like
that one.
It's our differences they might be cultural, but mine are based on facts, and you're based on politics.
Sorry, we are running out of time. You're free to chat after this talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I had a great time.
And thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.